Good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio. It's your host, Shauna. Let's get into this. So, oh my goodness. We are finally going over nitrogen this evening. Now, if you've been following, then you are aware that we've been struggling to get to this particular topic for about 2 to 3 weeks now. We started doing this periodic table, and this is actually supposed to be a live recording. I don't know what this phone is doing right now. It's supposed to be live. I don't know what happened, but okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and jump into this. This is the fourth of the four of the main elements, right, that are essential to 96% of the living things on Earth. So, contrary to popular belief, 78% of the atmosphere is comprised of nitrogen, unlike oxygen, what many assumed. It's colorless, odorless, gasless, and unreactive until it is put in another state. There are multiple forms. It's non-toxic and non-combustible when in the atmosphere. It's actually dinitrogen. It's nitrate when it's gas is turned into an ammonia, and then it's nitrate, which is ammonium, and then you have the organic nitrogen, right? Now, what I found to be the most interesting is that nitrogen is pretty young. Like, it's like a baby. As far as discovery and science is concerned, a lot of scientists, they discover a lot of the elements earlier. Nitrogen actually wasn't discovered until the 1700s. A lot of information came up. So in the 1760s, Henry Cavendish and Joseph Priestley were said to discover it in the 1760s, and in 1772, Daniel Rutherford was said to discover it. They both removed oxygen and carbon dioxide from the air and showed that residual gas, which is nitrogen, would not support combustion or living organisms. Now, that is true, especially when placed in abundant or concentrated areas, right? Now, this nitrogen is said to have formed 4.6 billion years ago, and is believed to be formed from concentrations of ammonia and said to form the sun and the overall solar system. That would be crazy, right? It's the seventh most abundant in the universe, and is actually responsible for a few things. Of course, we know like nitro, right? So if you watch, what is it called? Fast and the Furious, or if you're like into cars, if you know anything about fast cars or things like that, you know nitrogen is used as a gas. It's also inside of light bulbs, and it reduces fires on planes. It provides an unreactive atmosphere, allowing allowing food preservation, and is also used for a cooling method in concrete. Now, this dinitrogen is atmospheric, right? Now, when it turns into a different form, so it needs to be at negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit for it to be a liquid, and that's when it's cold, right? At room temperature ranging from 68 to 72, it's a gas. Then what happens is, if it comes into contact with when it's room temperature, right, it starts to boil and it goes back to a gas. So at room temperature, when it's exposed to room temperature, it causes it to reboil and go and be when it's in liquid form, and it causes it to turn back into a gas, right? Plants and animals can only use it when it's in this gaseous in this non-gaseous state, it can't be used as the di-atmospheric nitrogen. Like what is the most common, right? Or is there at its free will when it's in its normal room temperature state? It can't be used for photosynthesis. Now, when you take this over to the body, of course, nitrogen is used for protein synthesis. This is when the amino acids become protein. It influences growth and hormones and cell replacement and generation of new cells. Nitrogen turns nucleic acid into DNA and RNA, right? Which is also responsible for food digestion and overall growth. This is when it's normal, right? In its normal state. When you are deprived, you have brittle and hair loss and a whole bunch of different deficiencies that start to occur to the body. Now, when it's too much, it causes air pollutants. So you get like limited visibility. The plant's growth are altered, and then you have issues with overall breathing, right? Now, the nitrous oxide is a greenhouse gas that appears to be a contributing factor to global warming because it's one of those gases that sticks around for a long time. Now, when it comes to climate change, they're actually blaming nitrogen for all of this, right? There's a lot of different forms and states of matter. So obviously, this is going to vary depending on the state, and the state is going to be determined by the temperature. But there is, because, we look at history, we look at the atmosphere and the galaxy and how it relates to the spirit world, right? So I looked into a few things. Now, remember, I just said it's believed to have been formed 4.6 billion years ago, which means that's an average. And then in the 1700s, it was discovered by a few different scientists by removing oxygen and carbon dioxide from the air, right? And this is what was left over. But there is a process called nucleosynthesis, and it's when a star's helium becomes mass enough. It reaches a certain pressure and temperature, and the helium fuses into still heavier elements, right? And this is said to allow traces of nitrogen to be found. It's not like helium and hydrogen and lithium where it's so abundant in the stars, and this is actually a byproduct of the burning of the gases, right? As far as stars concerned. Now, nitrogen is also it's found in molecular forms in the clouds of gas between Earth and distant stars. So again, this is a byproduct. Now, when you start, again, I also want to state that nitrogen reacts. Nitrogen reacting with hydrogen forms ammonia. So when you think of nitrogen, think of ammonia. When you think of nitrogen, think of light bulbs. When you think of nitrogen, think of DNA, RNA, nucleic acid building blocks for your overall DNA, RNA structures, right? Now, because so many things, now we know, right? Too much of anything or not enough of it is harmful and toxic, and all of these elements are given to us in fixed form. They do have something called dead zones, though. It's like a crisis with the algae and the oceanic animals and plants, and it's saying that because of the overuse of synthetic nitrogen, like different fertilizers and manure, is running down into the different water systems, and it's causing a lot of gases and harm to the environment. And of course, we've discussed about it being like a long-lasting greenhouse gas. Now, when you take this over to the spirit world, right, like we do all the other elements, I want you to just think about this for a second. It is said and believed, right, to form the sun and the solar system. So when we start having these conversations about natural elements, think about how it helps us, because without nitrogen, there is no photosynthesis, right? Or at least as we know it in its regular, not in its regular state, because we would need it to be, it can't use the di-nitrogen, right? That's the atmospheric. So it needs to be turned into another form, because remember, this is the nitrate. You have nitrate, and then you have nitrite, and then you have dinitrogen. So the dinitrogen is actually which is atmospheric, which is not what the animals use. It's the nitrate, right? Which when it's formed with oxygen, and you need a whole bunch of other elements. But let's just take a look at this particular element and what it means to the overall life, right? Like on Earth and in the atmosphere, like in the galaxy, in the cosmos. If nitrogen is said to be responsible for forming the sun and the solar system, that means without it, we would literally have no life, because remember, it's responsible for allowing photosynthesis to occur. It's also responsible for being the building blocks, what forms DNA and RNA. So and nitrogen is stable, right? It's not like oxygen. It's not like moving around like that. I did look into knowing if we would run out of it, right? Like we're said to run out of oxygen and all these other elements. Nitrogen is the most seventh abundant in the universe, but it is the most abundant. It's 78% of our atmosphere, right? So obviously nitrogen is really important. Now, because plants can't use it, if it's converted into its reactive form, and too much of it causes air pollutants, then again, these fixed parts are given to us for a reason. Now, when you look at the spiritual world, to me, I'm not going to throw my thoughts and my beliefs and my assumptions on anyone, but I'm going to say from where I'm standing, it looks like nitrogen, and there we go with that number 7, because its atomic number is 7, and we're going to get to that. It's the 7th most abundant in the universe, and its atomic number is 7. Now, if you are well versed in any of the religious or sacred texts, then you know that 7 is really important. Now, what I wanted to get you guys to pay attention to and focus on is how it appears to be the only element of the main 4 that's been separated from the others, right? Oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, right? You always see those 3 kind of linking up, and then when they come with hydrogen or oxygen, we get something totally different. So just keep that in mind for when we're moving through the periodic table. Remember, we discussed how I think this is why the creator has me going in and out, because I said this before, we're going to be on the periodic table for a while. This is not something that you just get to come in and out of. Of course, you don't have to wait for me. You can study this on your own, but just for the sake of conversation and for the formal introduction into the table, it's important, okay? But I am going to end it here. Please, y'all, study your periodic tables, because I'm going to start doing like science little experiments and stuff like that, all right? I do love y'all. I hope all is well. I hope y'all are drinking your water, eating your fruit and your vegetables, and minding your business, or sipping your tea because it's free. All right, I hope y'all are getting your rest and laughing and staying safe out here. All right, love y'all. Peace.